The dossier is 12 pages. You have read it 4 times. Surveillance photos printed on matte paper, transaction records, a gray Ford pickup, a parking spot on Calle Insurgentes, Thursday at 7 a.m. The man in the polo shirt taps the table twice with 2 clean fingers and tells you the intelligence came from 2 independent sources, confirmed over 11 days of pattern surveillance. He says it the way a logistics manager announces a shipping update. Matter of fact. Final. You touch the photo, folded in your left breast pocket without thinking about it. Your brother passed his engineering entrance exam last week. The photo is him on the steps outside the examination hall, squinting into afternoon sun, grinning so wide it looks like it hurts. That photo is the only honest thing in this room. You are good at this because you treat it like a craft. Not a pleasure, not a release, a trade. Measured, clean, no blowback. That reputation took years to build, and it means your brother sits in a lecture hall in Monterey instead of standing on a corner like you did when you were young and the city felt like a trap with no exit. You tell yourself that distinction matters. You have told yourself that so many times it has become something close to true. Thursday, 6:58 a.m. The Ford is already in the spot when you arrive. Correct plate, correct lot. The man who gets out matches the photo in every detail. Same dark jacket, same build, same walk. The morning air smells like diesel and wet concrete. You do what you were trained to do. Clean, no blowback. The way it was supposed to go. 6 hours later, you are back at the safe house when the polo shirt man calls. His voice carries a texture you have never heard in it before. Not anger, not praise. Something underneath both. He tells you to stay inside. Do not contact anyone. There is a situation. You sit with that word for a long time after he hangs up. Situation. The target's real name was Ernesto Vargas. He was 44 years old. He ran the hardware store. He had no cartel affiliation, no distribution role, no intelligence value to any competing organization. The transaction records in your dossier were fabricated. The surveillance photos were real. The face was real. But the identity attached to that face was constructed by someone who needed a name in a file and chose his. Documented patterns in cases of cartel internal intelligence failures show this kind of deliberate mislabeling occurs when power struggles inside the organization require someone to be made guilty on paper before anyone asks questions out loud. You did everything right. 11 days. 2 sources. Confirmed. The confirmation was the lie. You feel the floor shift under you in a way that has nothing to do with your legs. Word moves through enclosed spaces the way water moves through cracked concrete. Within 72 hours, you hear what the polo shirt man will not say directly. Your plaza boss, the man who approved the intelligence package, the man 3 levels above the logistics table and the matte paper photos, has been in conversation with federal authorities for 8 months. Not as a target, as a source. He needed to hand over something credible to demonstrate his value. A documented killing. A verifiable operator. You are the gift. Ernesto Vargas was the wrapping paper. Your mouth fills with a taste like old copper. You understand now why the confirmation felt so clean. It was cleaned up before you touched it. You reach out to your spotter. 4 years of work together. You went to his daughter, Sophia's baptism. You stood in the back of that church in a shirt that was too stiff around the collar and watched him cry when the priest poured the water. He agrees to meet you at a coffee place 2 kilometers from the safe house. A plastic table on a cracked sidewalk. Traffic noise covering everything. He looks exhausted in a way that has nothing to do with sleep. When he sits down, he does not look at you directly. You have known him long enough to understand what that means before he opens his mouth. You ask him one question. How much? He tells you it was not about money. It was Sophia's treatment. Pulmonary specialist. 3 rounds of testing. medication not covered by anything he had, 40,000 pesos in legal and medical fees he could not produce in time to matter. He tells you he is sorry. He says it like a man reading from a document he did not write. You stand up and leave without answering because there is nothing to say that changes the geometry of what he has already signed. You do not blame him. That is the thing that hollows you out completely. You understand exactly why he did it. The same logic that has governed every choice you have made for the last several years, and it does not change a single thing. 3 days later, a press conference runs on the television in the corner of the room where you are trying to think. A federal agent stands at a podium in an immaculate gray suit with a small American flag on the lapel. He talks about disrupting trafficking operations through courageous cooperation from individuals willing to choose the right side. The camera cuts to a commendation plaque being placed in someone's hands, and the room applauds. The man being celebrated handed them your name as a goodwill gesture. He is being described as brave. You watch this in a room that smells like mildew and burnt coffee, and the specific dead silence of understanding that the architecture was always designed to end here, with you on this side of the wall and him on the other, and everyone calling the wall justice. Your contact in Sonora goes dark for 18 hours. When he resurfaces, his message is 4 words. They already found me, not the organization. Federal authorities had his line flagged. The boss did not just give them your name. He gave them the network, every exit route, every safe house you had ever mentioned, every contact you had ever used in his presence. Your spotter's testimony is now on formal record. He confirmed your presence at the scene, which is true. He also confirmed, under coach testimony, consistent with documented patterns of informant cooperation agreements, that you had personally requested the target, that the intelligence error was reported to you before execution and you proceeded anyway, that you knew. That last part is not true. You look at your hands in the half-dark of the safe house, and you think about Sophia's baptism, and you feel something that is not anger and not grief, but some third thing that does not have a clean name. Your brother calls that evening. He does not know the specifics. He has heard something ambient, the way news moves in a border city, never specific, always present. His voice is careful in the way young people's voices get when they are terrified and working very hard to sound like they are not. He asks if you are okay. You tell him yes. You tell him to stay in Monterrey. You tell him his next payment cleared this morning. Every word is true. Every word is a door swinging shut behind you. You have one move left, and it is not a good one. You reach out through a channel you have never used to a journalist who covers accountability cases for an investigative outlet that publishes things the government prefers do not surface. You have the original dossier. You photographed it the night of the briefing. Standard personal insurance, a habit built from years of understanding that in this world, trust has an expiration date, and you had better have something in your pocket when it expires. The photos do not exonerate you. You pulled the trigger. Nothing rearranges that fact. But they put the boss, the polo shirt man, and the federal agent in the same frame and make the architecture visible. You send the file. You put the phone in a storm drain 3 blocks away and walk to the nearest federal checkpoint and turn yourself in. Not because you believe in the institution standing in front of you. Because your brother is studying engineering in Monterrey, and the only way to keep him safe inside this particular geometry is to be officially, completely, irrevocably contained. The trial is clean and quick. The boss testifies via video link from an undisclosed location. His voice is measured. He expresses remorse for the culture of violence that consumes young men. He does not look at the camera when he says it. The jury deliberates for less than 4 hours. 28 years. No parole consideration before the 20-year mark. The judge describes it as proportionate accountability for a calculated act of brutality. You sit with that phrase for a long time. Proportionate accountability. You think about the federal agent's commendation plaque. You think about the polo shirt man's clean hands. You think about what proportion means when it is only ever applied in one direction. The journalist's piece publishes 3 weeks after sentencing. It runs in 2 outlets and gets picked up briefly by an international wire service. It lives for 48 hours before a government-adjacent media campaign buries it under statements about unverified speculation from sources with documented anti-law enforcement bias. The federal agent's regional directorship is announced the following Monday. The boss is in Phoenix with a new name. Ernesto Vargas's family filed a wrongful death inquiry. It was closed after 90 days. Insufficient evidence to establish state responsibility. His wife still runs the hardware store on Calle Insurgentes. She has a photo of him behind the counter. Nobody has ever told her the full truth, because the official version of what happened that Thursday morning requires you to be the only villain in it, and adding more names to the frame would complicate the commendation plaques and the directorship announcements and the careful architecture of who gets to be called brave. The story you just watched is fiction. The mechanism it describes is not. Documented cases across Mexico and the United States show a recurring pattern in cartel cooperation agreements, where informants who directed violence are absorbed into protected status, while the operators they controlled face prosecution alone. The federal handler who looked the other way, the boss who manufactured the intelligence, the spotter who signed a coach statement. These are not invented archetypes. They are composites of documented individuals whose names appear in investigative journalism that most people never read because it does not survive the news cycle. The system does not just tolerate this arrangement. It requires it. It needs someone to be the monster so that the people who built the monster can hold the commendation plaque and stand in front of a flag and say they chose the right side. Drop your biggest takeaway in the comments. I want to know at what point you stopped feeling sorry for him and whether you think there was ever a version of this story where the outcome was different. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.